Fastamai Vraina Sarah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be joined today by two guests. First of all, we will have Rebecca George, who's the Chief Executive at the Chamber of Commerce, and also Claire Christian, a local successful entrepreneur who's managing an online forum for local businesses. But first, I'd like to give you an update from our colleagues, our hard-working and dedicated colleagues at the Department of Health. Yesterday afternoon, it was announced that sadly, 2 further deaths from coronaviruses have been confirmed on the Isle of Man. Our thoughts and prayers are with those family and friends. They are the first recorded COVID-19 deaths in the community, and they mean the total number of deaths now stands at 6. 4 people have died in hospital. Since the last update yesterday, there's been 1 further confirmed positive test for coronavirus on the island. The total number of confirmed cases of coronavirus for us now stands at 298. In total, 283 patients have been instructed to self-isolate and 11 are being treated at the hospital. The contact tracing process is already underway and led by Public Health. There have now been 2,369 concluded tests, 45 people awaiting results, and 66 people are waiting tests. The number of individuals who are presumed recovered from the virus now stands at 192. To everyone that's at Nobles Hospital or recovering from home, I wish you a very speedy recovery. Now, I was going back and looking at when this administration started, which seems a very, very long time ago. Some of you will remember the programme for government that we rapidly put together and Tynwald endorsed. And a programme for government is our manifesto of what we said that we would want to achieve in this administration. Now, in that programme for government, there are many actions, many KPIs, but of course, like everything else, that was turned upside down just over a month or so ago. But when you go back and you look at that title, the programme for government, you will see it says our island, a special place to live and work. So, what's happened when we had our world turned upside down? We have focused on that live here on the Isle of Man. Preservation of life, that protection of life, and our entire government forces are behind that. But I want to say to you, the Manx public, thank you. Why? Because you've been understanding. We've had to make some very difficult, tough decisions. You have been cooperative. You've stayed at home. You've exercised social distancing when you go out. And you've been patient whilst we've been living in this restricted period. So we have seen behavioural change. And I find it quite ironic, really, because on the Isle of Man, we often criticise ourselves for not accepting change. You, the Manx public, have shown you can bust that myth. So I say to you, Jet Demai, well done. But also, think about work. What does that mean? Work is the economy. And the economy generates taxes. And taxes is what government needs to function. And clearly, we need to continue to function through these difficult times. But I want to say to you, the business community, thank you for your understanding, your cooperation, and your patience. And in some cases, I know that is extreme patience. But I want to also say thank you to the 25% of the working population that has adapted. They've changed their lifestyles as well, and they're still performing for their businesses and for the Isle of Man. Clearly, that means there are 75% of you that are not working. And I understand the distress that you're going through. The schemes that we have set up are now all up and running. And I wanted to give you a few statistics. The Corona Business Support Scheme has had over 3,000 applications, or inquiries should I say. The applications narrowed down to about 2,400 when we filtered out duplicates and so forth. There's about 1,000 of those have been paid, and therefore there's still just nearly 2,000 more still in process. The Strategic Capacity Scheme has had 71 applications, 48 are already processed. Adaptation Scheme, 16 applications, and there are 3 processed. The bank loan guarantee has had 33 applications and 9 have been sanctioned. The MIRA has had about 2,000 applications and 350 have been paid, and that was only set up on the 6th. The salary support scheme went live on the 16th and has had 566 applications. At this point, I would like you to hear from our two guests who have a different perspective and really the front line of where businesses are and where they're feeling. At this point, I'd like to introduce Rebecca George, who's the Chief Executive from the Chamber of Commerce, who has over 400 members, and they've been running a business tracker that has been very helpful to understand what this impact is on an ongoing basis. So if I can ask you, Rebecca, to maybe address the Manx public.
Thank you very much, Minister. Since the pandemic hit the island, the Chamber of Commerce has been working tirelessly to offer support to our members in the wider business community. As the island's largest business network and a key conduit between local business and the government, we are in a unique and privileged position to channel the views of our members and the wider business community direct to the relevant departments within government. We have a strong and open relationship with government, and in these unprecedented times, it demonstrates the true benefit of our relationship by listening to each other. Over the past weeks, we've worked very closely with the Department for Enterprise to ensure that we are filtering as much useful information as we can to assist in the shaping of the financial support that is very much needed to assist the island's businesses, large and small. 3 weeks ago, we released our first business impact tracker, which is serving as a barometer of businesses' response to the government's financial measures. It is helping us to understand the short and mid-term impact the current situation is having, and is giving us a valuable insight into changes to working practices over the next few months. It will also track how quickly any new government measures that are introduced are addressing the impact of this crisis on the local economy. The first two trackers have been seeing contributions from over 400 local businesses. Each of them have given us vital insight into areas including sectors that are affected, cash flow, retention of employees, and timescale of impact. The results of the first two trackers can be seen on our website. Another key area of support we are launching in the coming week is our business advisory service. We've mobilised the service onto a highly sophisticated and user-friendly online platform to help those who require much-needed assistance during this time. It utilises our 450 strong membership, and it gives businesses access to some of the island's most successful and experienced business people who have skills and expertise in areas including, but not limited to, tax, accountancy, HR, marketing, legal, entrepreneurial thinking, even health and well-being, or just offering general moral support. If you can't find what you're looking for, generally we'll do our very best to find you an expert that can help. It's a free of charge service open to all businesses, whether or not they're chamber members, for anyone that needs help right now. But it's also going to help businesses emerge stronger from the current situation by supporting their recovery and growth. Finally, I would like to finish by reassuring all local businesses from startup to large corporates that we're here for you. We are doing everything we can to ensure you are supported, so please reach out if you need help. This situation will continue to test businesses from some time to come, and we need to build resilience. Over the past few weeks, I've seen some amazing stories of local businesses pulling together to share ideas and knowledge to help each other through this crisis. And this embodies everything that the Chamber of Commerce represents. One of whom you'll be hearing from next, Claire Christian of Christian Couture, has been a shining light in terms of helping retailers, those who are self-employed, tradespeople, navigate their way through the various financial packages to ensure they have a voice into Chamber and government. We also have companies in the manufacturing sector who are helping with direct support for nobles via 3D printing and the procurement of other materials. We are lucky enough to live on this beautiful island where the community has come together to support each other through this difficult time. And that can be said for the business community as well. As the Minister has just mentioned, our island is a special place to live and work. Our strength comes from our members, and when we get to a point of returning to some sort of normality, we intend to be there to continue supporting our local economy to grow and thrive once again. I'd also like to add my personal thanks to all the NHS and key workers looking after the vulnerable at this time. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. That's very helpful, and I hope that will be well received. I'd now like to introduce Claire Christian, who is a highly talented, successful entrepreneur who's generated an online forum that has over 2,300 members and has been fielding a lot of these queries and questions and helping us as government gain feedback as we manage our schemes and how we navigate this. So over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Minister Skelly. Good afternoon. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to provide an update from the Isle of Man local businesses and self-employed and the sole trader community. Often the small to medium scale businesses do not have a collective voice, but these make up 69% of the total number of employed on the island. And it has been through social media and mutual support that we've been able to provide a forum to communicate to the Isle of Man government, ensure that everyone is heard. I would firstly like to congratulate and praise the Isle of Man local business community. Through incredible hardship, the amount of good deeds, support and positivity is overwhelming. Local businessman Greg Davison started the local company's Isle of Man Facebook group, which has now over 2,300 members. Initially, the group became a platform for our business to air concerns and seek advice from each other. But subsequently, ideas began to flow with regards how to adapt and transform businesses during the lockdown. It has now grown into a forum where people like myself have an opportunity to support fellow businesses and colleagues and help them navigate the government support schemes. And importantly, the non-government support schemes and options, such as rent deferral, bank overdrafts and loans, or utilities advice. This group has been fundamental support to each of its members, and I personally receive around 100 queries a day, acting as a firewall to filter to help the Isle of Man government reduce queries, and therefore increase their expediency in processing your applications. Alongside Chamber of Commerce, we are providing intelligence with regards to current local business status, which again has been critical to communicate the realistic, diverse landscape and crisis in all sectors to the government. The group has helped the government to understand that we all require more transparency and need more proactive communication to individuals about the status of their applications. And we require them to widen their support to reach more people and more sectors, as we are all impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The mental health of the island's nation is forefront in everyone's minds. The group continues to support efforts and maintain levels of stimulus and to provide a source of empathy and understanding towards many individuals going through the same journey and the same stress. But the government schemes are not still perfect. And we know some businesses and individuals are falling through cracks and they're not eligible. It's crucial that we look beyond a sector-based approach and realize that we have to support everyone to ensure that we have a sustainable economy when the COVID-19 crisis and lockdown restrictions are lifted. I and many others will continue to raise these issues and gaps in government support to the relevant department heads and ministers in the hope that the schemes are widened further to include everyone who desperately needs the support and to maintain the support through the crisis, which we know will not end quickly. In the interim, there is non-government funded support available through local banks and the newly established Manx Solidarity Fund. And I urge people who find themselves unable to secure government support to look to their banks and perhaps apply for a loan or grant from the Manx Solidarity Fund. This can be accessed online at manxsolidarityfund.com. And likewise, if you are a business or an individual that can help support the Manx Solidarity Fund, please contact them. No matter how big or how small your donation, you'll be investing in the sustainability economy and helping support your business community. At this point, I would like to thank the many individuals in the DfE and Treasury departments who have been working very hard to process and deliver the government support scheme applications, which are so desperately needed to support our economy and save our jobs. Nobody knew how to react to a pandemic crisis, and no one should be criticised for that. Following Treasury Minister Cannon's recent update, we local businesses and individuals must continue our efforts. We need to stay at home, protect our local health service and save lives. We must all work together to do this so that our business community can be among the first in the world to safely return to work, with clear guidance from clinicians and Isle of Man government and, of course, local input industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Rebecca, and greatly appreciate all the input from not just you, but your members there. So very happy to take questions, and I think up first is Paul. Paul, faster mine.
Hi, Lawrence. We've heard a lot there about the private sector, so this one's really for you again about the public sector. And have you got an update on how many civil servants have been furlonged? Will there be more now or less because we're hitting the plateau? You know, on those figures, do we have any at all? We've actually people being put on that system in government workers.
Wait, sorry, Paul, did you say furlonged? How many government
furlonged.
workers? I don't have
Civil
that.
servants.
Yes, I don't have that. No, I don't have that figure. But what I do know, Paul, is across government, like private sector and key workers, we have been suffering with regards to people having to self-isolate. So, but there has been a phenomenal amount of redeployment across government, and government itself is learning to adapt and work in this particular work-at-home environment. And what I would say is that it is being refined and it is being worked on all the time. So in terms of furlong numbers, I would have to defer that answer.
Do you have something? I mean, is there any? I mean, I've never heard any figures. I've asked this question a few times over the weeks now, so I was just wondering.
Right. I don't personally, Paul, but I'll take it on board and we'll definitely come back to you.
Okay.
Did you have another question?
Yeah, I mean, this is again really for you. It's about the potential that people go back to work. I've heard a lot of people. I'm sure everyone else has. That they're a bit worried it's sector by sector rather than job by job. To if they've got safety with how they can work, rather than just saying it's construction period. Can you give us any more on that? How people should feel safe when they're told they can go back to work?
Yes. Well, what I would say there, Paul, is that we've had a cross-government task force looking at this particular issue. We know, and I know there's been this construction, horticulture, has been a lot of commentary around that. And we, as an island, we decided to actually prevent that work on an ongoing basis, and rather than continue with it as the UK did, and it allowed us an opportunity to really understand the data that we're collecting every day. And this is what's really very important in this, because as we test and to a very high ratio and trace, we get to understand exactly where we're going and what the data is doing with regard to that all important curve. Are we managing it? Are we containing it? Are we suppressing this virus? So clearly that's played a very, very significant role. So what we do know is elsewhere those industries can perform quite well, but we are only going to do anything in this particular space with two things. Number one, with the support of our clinical management team, and secondly, with very, very strict guidelines, because we recognise how fragile this would be. We don't want to have any sort of a double bounce, so we very much have that in mind. So we will wait till Chief Minister makes an announcement on Tuesday, when we will have even more data and available before making any sort of firm announcement.
All right, so we'll get the announcement on Tuesday. That's news. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, Paul, faster my. Sam, next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Skelly. I just want to start off by going to Mrs. Christian there. You said about we must look beyond the sector-based approach. Can I just check what exactly it is you mean by that?
Hi there, Sam. Yes. So basically, at the moment, the scheme, the government support scheme for the grant, has a sector approach, as you know, and there are some people that are falling through the cracks there. For example, there could be mobile dog groomers or mobile hairdressers that don't have premises. So they're not being reached because they have a sort of unique way of reaching their customers. So that could be one example.
Sam, if I may, just adding to that, yeah, we're picking that up too, and this is the benefit of Claire and Rebecca and the Chamber of Commerce, is the feedback that we're getting to understand if we need to make changes to our schemes. But what's happened is, and we talk about this in the past, don't we, how diverse our economy is, 24 different business sectors, but there's subsectors within sectors, and what's happening is with this virus and the impact of it, it's becoming wider than we initially thought. So this feedback has been really important and very vital in understanding and how do we get the appropriate support out there. But it's a good question, Sam. Thank you. Did you have another question, Sam?
Yeah, just as a second one then, we have to sort of go back onto being a sector, unfortunately. The tourism sector realistically is going to have a very difficult year. Possibly may require support longer than other sectors. How long is the government able or willing to be able to support that sector? Or will realistically the government and central figures have to take a hit for the year to keep some of the particularly smaller hotels running?
Yeah, I think it's one that we're very, very conscious of, that that industry will struggle for some time. And I don't think there's any two ways to put that. But it's not just here on the Isle of Man. I think you have to look at what's going to happen with travel globally. And, you could have borders open up, which, would only be done if there was extreme confidence. But the point is, I don't know if the public are going to be ready to start traveling anytime soon. So there's lots and lots of questions. What we try to do first and foremost is the strategic capacity scheme.
Adjusting tax rates. We've been told the dust needs to settle beforehand. The Chamber of Commerce's president has said the focus needs to be on the mid to long-term plan for the economy. Does the government still believe they can wait potentially months and spend millions of pounds before they can make significant changes?
I don't know, Rebecca, did you want to comment first there, or I'll be quite happy. The question was really to government, I think. The Chamber has raised this issue. I think this is the mid to longer term issues that we have to consider. And what we're trying to do here is try and address these first and foremost, the life preservation, the protection of life first and foremost, and then the economic aspects, which is what we're introducing here at this particular point in the balance of debate. So we will have to consider all options as we go forward. Treasury Minister, I think, highlighted just on Friday that he's looking at a revised budget. Clearly, that would need to come forward sooner than it would in a normal government cycle, and I think he's aiming for that in July. But that would be when we understand the impact, and therefore, when you understand the impact, and this gets back to data, and I would like to think that this government has been very good in trying to have evidence-based decisions with their policies. So when we're more armed with that data, we can understand what changes and introduced new policies that we need to bring into place. But thank you very much for that question, Noel.
Just to clarify on that, though, is 3 months not too long to wait when we're spending so much money as a government?
Well, no, I think what was set by was sufficient funds to last us 3 months should we have a sustained lockdown period. So we knew that this impact would be very severe, but we had to put something there in the very, very early stages. Bear in mind that we had to move legislation as well through Timble and keep all our political members informed and understand of what our thinking is. But clearly that changes and has done, continues to change. Rebecca, I think you wanted to come in from the Chamber of Commerce perspective.
Yes, thank you, Minister. Thanks for the question, Amanda. I just wanted to jump in on this to, clarify the importance of Chamber's role in all this going forward. Obviously, many sectors and many businesses were impacted by this crisis, overnight, and lost their revenues, almost immediately. And, that's where the likes of the local company forum has been amazing in assisting, that initial immediate help that businesses require. What we're doing at Chamber now is trying to look at the mid to long-term effects this is going to have on the economy. This is not going to go away overnight. Even when we get back to some sort of normality, as the minister has said, the borders won't be open, the rest of the world won't be open, and this will have a global impact on the economy. Many businesses on the island, as we all know, are in the financial sector, e-gaming. All of these sectors may not be affected now, but they will be affected in the coming months and even, in a year's time. So that's why, the business barometer impact trackers that we're doing are so important. And we're going to continue to adapt those and send them out to business community ongoing, because we need to understand what sectors are being affected and when. It may be that some sectors say, they're doing okay at the moment, but this may hit them in 3 months' time. So, that we're constantly working to talk to the local businesses about when they foresee this pandemic is going to affect them and their business. And that sort of intel is really important to us. And it's what we feed into government to ensure that support will be there for them when they need it.
Thank you, Bex. Was there a second question there from Amanda?
That's all right.
Yes.
The salary support scheme offers employees £280 a week. For some people who might normally work 40 hours per week at minimum wage, this is a reduction in their weekly income if the employer cannot afford to top up their salary. How has this figure been reached, and are we going to see a reduction in minimum wage across the island?
Well, that's an interesting question, and behind any review of the minimum wage, first and foremost, there is a fair amount of research and analysis done before the independent committee comes to government and makes a recommendation. So that will kick off at some stage, but clearly that would be suspended at the moment. But I believe that figure, if I remember correctly, was based on stand corrected here, but I think it was 75% of the living wage was where that figure was arrived at that point. So at this moment of time, we haven't picked up. It's only just started, so we're only just starting to see those applications come in. So I think up next, we got Tim Glover, Faster My Tim, Manx Radio.
Faster My, everybody. The Isle of Man Chamber of Commerce survey, just want to focus in on the employment stats from that, where you've got 41% planning to temporarily reduce their workforce in the next week, and you have 26% saying that they will permanently reduce their workforce. I know the March unemployment more than doubled. Do you think this is just the tip of the iceberg? That's a question for everyone.
Yes, thank you, Tim. We know the numbers are going to go up, and we expected these numbers there to go up, which is why we launched a whole series of different schemes, effectively, is to try and provide the right level of support. So how much further that will go will be very difficult to tell. So should we reach a point where some people may be able to go to work, that might change circumstances. So, but I don't know if Rebecca or even Claire would like to comment on this one. Claire, would you like to first at all?
So, I mean, this is exactly the reason why the schemes need to be widened and further, it needs to be interrogated even more, because there's lots of people that are falling through the cracks. And this will mean a lot more job redundancies. There's sort of different situations whereby I can say that an example, there's shareholders where multiple businesses who have common shareholding, and only one is entitled to support on the first come first serve basis for the grant scheme, and this isn't always fair. And there's some businesses' employees are not getting support. So, it is really crucial that government hear that all of these individual types are really listened to now, so that we can try and reduce any further redundancies. There's also another area where the salary support scheme, this doesn't cover the one employee, it just covers 2 or more. And as you know, as I spoke about earlier, it's a really diverse type of economy that we have, and that businesses are so unique here on the island that they could be going for 15 years and still only have 1 employee, and they need to be supported by having an equal lifeline as everybody else. Whether or not you have an assistant or not, or several employees. So this is really important. Otherwise, they're going to end up at the bottom of the scale and claiming job seekers allowances. And then there's another area which is also many owners and entrepreneurs, they pay themselves with dividends, and the current salary support scheme only pays those who've paid themselves a wage, and it doesn't support people who've paid themselves a dividends. But if this is a legitimate income instead or on top of a small salary, we just want those people to get equal support and gain that £280 per week. Otherwise, if this isn't changed, these are going to be more and more redundancies. It's really crucial.
Thank you, Claire. I think that's very, very helpful. And Tim, did you have a second question?
Yeah, just on that, because the other part of the survey, the 14% have received some form of funding, although 68.4% have applied for government funding. If this keeps rolling on and it's tied into the unemployment, you've only got a certain number of staff, Minister, haven't you, to process all these? And there are some complaints that people are either falling through the crack or it's taking so long to get the money into their hands.
Yes, I think that's the ongoing challenge, really, Tim, as you're highlighting. I think we sort of hit the peak, certainly from a business support scheme perspective. So if you think there were 3,000 odd inquiries, of which there were about 2,400 legitimate requests in there, and then it is the filtering of those requests. So if there are issues, there are that must be reviewed and verified. That does take time too, but I will say this, that our teams are actually working 7 days a week. They are working shifts. I do reach out and understand exactly the distress this is causing people who are not getting any contact. If they've had no contact at all, I would strongly recommend they do try and make contact with us from those initial ones, because there were a few, I believe, very early ones that we didn't pick up, and they may have potentially fallen through the cracks, as what I think Claire is explaining there. So if there's anyone who hasn't had any contact, feel free to contact us. We have enterprisesupport@gov.im. Rebecca, did you want to add into that there?
Yes, thank you, Minister. Just quickly, thank you, Tim. I know Claire will echo my thoughts on this. Obviously, the speed at which government have pulled together these packages and mobilised staff to get these things running, it was a huge task, and I think we're looking at the figures now. They're starting to catch up with all these applications, so we do expect to see the figures change when we close our third tracker next week. We expect to see them rise in receipt of funding, especially because many businesses were waiting for the salary support scheme to launch, which obviously launched on Thursday. And the Treasury Minister mentioned that he expects money to start arriving by the end of next week. So we hope that we'll start to see those figures change. One area that we were and continue to be concerned around, and I think Claire will echo this, is that in terms of furloughing employees, we are concerned that businesses are making decisions now because they can't get the support quick enough. They can't get the financial support. They can't wait any longer and are having to make decisions on either business closures or laying off employees. And we just hope that businesses can hang on as long as they can while they're waiting for further financial support.
Well, it was just the other part of the survey, because it all ties in, isn't it? It's the number of businesses that and the levels of cash reserves that those businesses have. It's going to be crucial, isn't it? Especially while they're waiting for these schemes to really kick in.
Yes, I think you're right. Absolutely. I think, Claire, you wanted to add a point on there, did you, Claire?
Yeah, Tim, that's actually a really, really good point, because actually we were struggling as an economy before this even hit. And so people didn't have a lot of cash reserves. And so now, we're asking them to dip into that. And actually, it's not necessarily there. So we do understand difficulties of setting these schemes up in the speed that they have. And they bottlenecked, and probably, as Mr. Skelly has said, that they have they're over the peak now, but it's really getting cash to those people, and it's just getting food on their table, making sure that people can survive this, and making sure that we can all come out the other end and have some sort of economy. So the pressure is on, and it still is on government to get the funding, do it quickly, communicate better, because actually a lot of the anxiousness is when you put your application form in to receiving money, there's a whole window there for communication, just simple checkpoints. It's gone to DFE, it's gone to Treasury, it's now gone to payment. And that sort of thing could really help each individual in each business. And we're really, really hoping that the government can try, as now they're getting used to these schemes and more people are being drafted in, they can really start to increase that transparency. Excuse me, not used to talking so much.
To Rob next. Rob from 3FM.
Good afternoon, Minister. I just wanted to touch on for my first question the feedback that Rebecca and Claire have given there. I know Claire mentioned that there is a call on the online forums, for example, for a bit more transparency and proactive communication. And as she's mentioned again a couple of times, a couple of businesses falling through the cracks. You mentioned after that this feedback is valuable because it could assist in any further changes that might need to be made. What plans do you have to make any further changes to plug that gap so that these businesses that may be missing out will have the support in the future?
Right. Thank you for that, Rob. So I guess that follows on to previous questions, really, where we're discovering where there are gaps. And what we're trying to do is to address those on an ongoing basis, because sometimes we do not know if a business can actually adapt. So there's an adaptation grant, because it's quite an interesting one there, because we've seen some businesses that have managed to rapidly adapt, but they need some financial support. Their adaptation grant, I think it's only got 16 applications in, but we know there's quite a lot more interest as people now look at what the new economy might actually be. How do they change their businesses? So if there are gaps, we're looking to try and obviously address those wherever we possibly can. But I get back to a point I think Claire made earlier about please speak to your banks as well. We have obviously set up the bank loan guarantee scheme, which is £60 million there, of which government is backing that up to 80%. And I think we've sanctioned nine deals already in respect to that. So there is quite a lot of activity in that space there too. I think, Rebecca, you wanted to come in on that one? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Minister. Just a quick point to add regards the business loan guarantee. We, Chamber, are working with a couple of the banks on the island this coming week to look at how we can help businesses in their applications for these schemes, for that scheme, the bank loan guarantee scheme and the business adaptation. Some of these businesses would like to access this financial support, but may struggle in pulling together the structure around the application and the financials that they need to provide. So through the Business Advisory Service, we've got some phenomenal mentors and advisors in the business community that can help businesses with their applications. So we're chatting to the banks now to talk about what they want to see from these businesses to help them in their applications. So hopefully that can help people get their applications through and get access to the funding quickly.
Thank you, Bex. Rob, did you have a second question?
Yes, please, for either Rebecca or Claire. And I know this is looking a little bit further into the future, I guess, but I imagine it's a topic that has come up to an extent. There will come a time where businesses in different sectors are phased back in, whenever that may be. From what you're hearing from Rebecca with Chamber members and Claire with those businesses you spoke to online, have they mentioned any significant changes they may have to make in the long term, even when we are allowed to go back to work on a regular basis?
Shall I go first? Hi, thanks, Rob. I think Claire possibly has heard more from the smaller local retailers. I know that they've adapted their businesses so quick. You know, if you look at a lot of the restaurants, obviously have adapted their businesses to, you know, to takeaway services. Many businesses have had to look at ways to adapt what they're doing, change their model. We're not seeing it from a chamber perspective from the larger corporates at the moment. I think, you know, one area we have seen is how amazingly businesses have adapted to working from home. You know, some of the larger corporates on the island who have, you know, 300, 400, 500 employees now have significantly reduced the number of employees they actually have on the premises to sort of 2 or 3. The rest of the workforce are working from home and doing that well. How long that is sustainable for, you know, we don't really know. It's not ideal, but it's phenomenal to see how businesses have adapted their working practices. I think Claire wants to jump in as well.
Go ahead, Claire.
Thank you, Rob. It's a great question. So I think probably one of the biggest trends that I'm seeing on the ground is that this is huge. Everybody wants to shop local, and they really want to support each other no matter what the product is. And they're starting to think, we don't want to buy on internet shopping. We want to get everything sourced locally. We want it made here. We want it produced here. And that's because we've realized how fragile our economy is. And I think that's a really great thing for the island. And it's hugely supporting each other's business. I mean, I've been through literally curves and waves as a businesswoman where people have been so ultimately generous and supported me. And it's really, really amazing. How I will personally develop, of course, social distancing is going to be one of the key things that we're going to have to look at while that remains in place. And I think that as businesses, we're all just trying to speak to each other and learn from each other how we can do that. And we're looking to actually supermarkets, how they're performing right now. And we're looking to basically any kind of store that's open, and we're going to try and emulate that as the sectors start to reopen again. But really the most important factor is we want to stay healthy, and we don't want another curve back up. So we've got to really, really make sure that whatever we do is completely set within the government guidelines and rules. So that we ensure that we can perform and start building our economy again. There's certainly another focus about diversification. I think a lot of people are going to be nervous about returning into a store, perhaps to look round and what implications that means, or perhaps going to a cafe if they reopen or when they do reopen, I should say, in the shorter term or longer term. So there is going to be a lot of retraining, and a lot of us are going to have to judge where we want to go and what we want to do. But it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. And the most important thing is the sectors that are left to last, they're going to need the most support later on. And that's something bringing back to Chamber, where we've got to help them and we've got to monitor that situation and really keep feeding. This isn't the end. This isn't the start. We literally have just got to keep feeding that information to government, because this is the first time that this has ever happened in history.
Very good. Thank you very much for that, Claire. I think I'm happy to take a few more questions. I think first up was Amanda from the Jeff the Mongoose, the Dalby Spook.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Ms. George. Thank you very much for explaining about what the Chamber is doing to help during the pandemic. Businesses have been asked to think outside the box, to adapt and be profitable in these unusual times. Is it really possible for the Chamber of Commerce to give all businesses ideas to successfully adapt when so much of the demand is pent up inside their homes? And what tangible plans have you got in place to help them?
Thank Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for your question. Yeah, it's tough at the moment, you know, and we don't know how long this is going to go on for. We don't know how long businesses are going to have their employees working from home. So it's tough. But what I am seeing is the phenomenal way that these businesses have changed their working practices. It's incredible how quickly working practices have changed. And I think no one will ever be the same after this. No business will ever run in the same way. I think there's so much to learn from this this current situation in terms of how people work, how people have adapted, how businesses have adapted. So one thing that Chamber will do is continue. What we like to do at Chamber is ask our members to work with each other, and that's one of the strongest things we can do as a Chamber of Commerce is businesses helping other businesses, and you know that's what the local companies group is doing with Claire. You know, it's about looking at what one company is doing and how we can share that with other businesses, and a lot of what we're doing at the Chamber through the Business Advisory Service encompasses all of that. You know, it's looking at companies like PwC, KPMG, who have mobilised amazing support services. We're sharing that through our network and saying to other businesses, help is there if you need it. It's all free. There's some phenomenal business brains on this island that can help, who are willing to assist and help free of charge just to get everybody through this situation. But we saw this before the pandemic hit. We always, you know, some of the businesses we have on this island are phenomenal at helping each other. And, you know, the help is there. It's 100% there, and people are willing to help. So, you know, that's where the strength of the Chamber comes from, and will continue to do so, you know, when we get back to some sort of normality.
Thank you, Bex. Great. Tim, I think you had another question.
Yeah, it's been partly answered already, but the figures health-wise, if my maths is correct, which isn't necessarily the case, we've got 100 active cases at the moment, 11 in hospital, 37 we know in a cluster at a care home. So we've got 52 others. We have got a lesson in history. We've got the Spanish flu outbreak over 100 years ago, where the biggest amount of casualty came in a second wave because social distancing was relaxed. So how conscious are we of learning that and taking lessons from history?
Yeah, I think a very good question, and that is always been the fear, is what the double bounce might occur. So it comes down to us here on the Isle of Man, and as I highlighted earlier, I'm so impressed with regards to the general public and particularly the business community, how they've managed to adapt to this new environment. And this new environment has required tremendous discipline, and we managed to do it very quickly. But I think it's because we've made decisions, decisive decisions, which have been difficult decisions, and they've definitely caused a number of issues. But they have been for the benefit, the health and security of our island, and people have quickly recognised that. So subsequently, I think we've seen this social behaviour change happen a lot earlier here in the Isle of Man, perhaps than it did elsewhere. So we would hope that would continue. But I will say this, that as a government, we're very much behind our health team. They are obviously who we go to first and foremost before we consider making any changes around the economy whatsoever. And we would put very strict guidelines in place, and if they're not adhered to, you will see those guidelines come back. So we're very stringent. We'll be very stringent with any of those measures. Thanks for that, Tim. Sam.
Thank you. It was just the way realistically it seems to be with health. We're looking towards the MGP having to be cancelled. When are we likely to see a decision being announced on that? And secondly, as a sort of thing, we recently saw the virtual Grand National being run on ITV, and it's been suggested online that we could do a similar thing with the TT, particularly in terms of like a Legends race. Do we have any progress on that? And could we indeed see that coming to our screens somewhere?
Thanks for that, Sam. Good question. I know it's bobbed up before. I know my colleague Rob Collister is bringing that up with our motorsport team. Tim asked the question, I think, last week with regards to the Grand Prix and the Classic as well. And what I said that then would be that we would be no later than early May. We'll be making that decision. So there's a number of reasons for that, but we will make an early decision on that no later than early May. But thanks for that question. I guess I should give Paul and Rob, did you want a second bite at all? Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
If you don't mind. About the 75% of living wages. Obviously, it depends on your circumstance. I mean, a single parent, a single person, or cohabitating. So, I mean, it can be massively under-supported, that scheme, can't it? Depending on what people's living wages in their own circumstances.
Yeah. Great question, because it's all around living wages. I'll probably get my colleague, Minister Thomas, here to talk about the living wage, because it always gets convoluted, that one, mixed up with the minimum wage. But the living wage is about a number of different circumstances taken into consideration. So what we had to do is take, I believe, was the medium level in respect to that. So at this moment in time, I haven't heard too much kickback on that, but do bear in mind some of the wage support schemes have only just gone out. So we hope they will be a good uptake, a healthy uptake, and they will meet the fiscal requirements that the general public have. Rob, did you have a last question at all? You want to have a...
Yes, I did. This is quite a general one. This might take a moment to explain if you'll allow me to do so. With obviously the unemployment rising because of the pandemic, I'm just wondering, is there the possibility in your mind, and I know there'll be many factors to consider with something like this, if there are people out of work, to train them appropriately and bring them into other key sectors that are still running, because you may have something there that, you know, it allows someone to have an income to get back into work in a field temporarily or permanently, and also it adds more key personnel to these areas to keep the island operating. Has there been an initiative considered around those lines, or anything around that at all?
Yeah, very, very valid question, actually, and it has come up. It did come up quite early doors. One of the reasons we made the changes to the work permit system is to allow some mobility for that, whereas we may have jobs lost in one sector, but there are jobs available in another sector. How do we transfer that? And clearly we want people to stay here and obviously contribute to the economy, but ongoing retraining programs, I think, will be one of the factors that will come out in the next phase, I would suggest, in the medium term. So can I just thank everyone, you know, for their questions. Really appreciate it. Some really interesting questions. I want to make a special thank you to Rebecca and also to Claire for your contributions, which it was very helpful to understand the business take on what's actually happening here. And if I can just finish with a number of shout outs, please. The first shout out goes to Sam Skinner. She was on annual leave from a role within the Western Community Support Team, but was called back there as there was a need due to staff shortages, something going on all over the island, and she's helping the elderly and vulnerable. Well done, Sam. Another one of Howard's heroes goes to the students of St Ninian's High School Special Unit, who made a card this week for Captain Tom Moore, the famous Tom Moore, who raised an amazing amount of money for the NHS and celebrates his 100th birthday on the 30th of April. The card has been posted to him, and I just want to say well done to everyone involved with this special project. And finally, two food-related Howard's heroes, the Cupcakery in Castletown, who delivered some cakes to the team at Southlands, and also to Michael Murphy of Lay Experience in Douglas, who provided the police with his world-famous French onion soup. Delicious it is too. I know the constabulary was much appreciative of this very, very kind gesture. And I did have one additional one here. It's a happy birthday. So, La Ruggie Sunny Dirt to Sharon Reid, who's a senior infection nurse at Nobles, and she has been working tirelessly and is actually working today. So happy birthday to you, Sharon. And this is from all your team, and they want to wish you all the very best, and thank you very much for your commitment. So I'll just finish you with Mannen Sonderbrak, Isle of Man forever. Tani Sursti, stay safe. Gurmayr.
From the first deliveries into Douglas
to stocking shelves with essentials.
We're providing transport for key workers.
We're keeping you informed and delivering services that people rely upon every day.
We are keeping the Isle of Man's
essential services running.
Please help us to help you.
Shop responsibly, consider others,
and stay at home if possible.
For you, for our island, for our community, let's do this together.
For you, for our island, for our community, let's do this together.
For you, for our island, and for our community, let's do this together.
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 For you, for our island, for our community, let's do this together.